Hey guys, my name is Aidan Hennebry. I'm coming to you from the doghouse. This is my 99 square foot work shed creative studio on the back of my property. I'm a graphic designer based out of the city of St. Thomas in Ontario, Canada, just south of London. And today I'm really excited to be making this video to bring you guys behind the scenes with me, looking at a logo that I put together for Nick Parry of Nautical Studios. This was a logo I did a number of years ago, but it has been one of my favorite ones. I refer back to it often. I'm proud of it. I thought it'd be interesting to show you guys a bit of the process that went on, the creative decision making that went into making this logo, so that if you're going to hire a designer, even though everyone's process will differ a little bit, and quite frankly my process has grown and evolved since the time that I did this logo, you at least get a little bit of an idea of what it is like to work with a graphic designer on a project like designing a new logo for your business. Now, Nick Parry of Nautical Studios, he is a solid guy. He's a wedding photographer based out of the city of Hamilton in Ontario. He's a hilarious guy. He has a big Bookstagram, book talk account that you should definitely go follow. Nick's ability to capture an amazing photo, a really unique, original photo with a mood and a feeling and a vibe that is unlike any other photographer that you're going to see. That is one of his talents and one of the things that I have always admired and respected about him. So getting to work with Nick on this logo project honestly was a dream come true. So when you're hiring a graphic designer, chances are you're going to have a number of rounds of kind of presentations that are going to go over the different stages of wherever that project is at. For me, I like to start with mood boards and Pinterest boards and all kinds of stuff in order to create just kind of this visual language, this frame of reference of kind of what we want the end product to look like. So in this specific project, I put together a couple different mood boards to get Nick's feedback on kind of what were the ideas, what was the feeling, the type of logo that appealed to him the most. So once I'd heard back from Nick, I got a bit of a sense of direction of where to go. So word marks were definitely something that spoke to him. I know that badges was another thing that really made Nick feel like, okay, that there's something in there. He also really dug vintage, and so you're going to see that as we get into kind of the first round of designs, and honestly some of the working files that I had where I'm actively trying to design and work my way through this, you're going to see those inspirations come through. So here, when you look at the artboard, you can see a bunch of different logos, and what I'll do is I'll take all the logos that I'm proud of that I think kind of have something to them, and I'll assemble them in the middle. But as you zoom out on this bad boy, you start to see all the different ideas that kind of get scattered and how one thought leads to another. And so, you know, you zoom in on some of these things here, and it's interesting to see the different ways that you're manipulating text. You're starting to pull in these different icons. You know, there's a lot of this stuff gets left on the cutting room floor. It doesn't go anywhere. Ooh, there's like a fun little color version that sometimes is good just to kind of, you know, wet the palette, give you an idea of what it might look like in the end. You can see, obviously, yes, nautical, you know, a lot of anchors work their way in here, but trying to think beyond that, you know, maybe it's a sailboat. Maybe it's a sailboat. Maybe it's something that's kind of hand lettered, hand drawn. And I'll be the first to admit this is long before I had spent any reasonable length of time hand lettering, and so that I look back at that now as a piece that was early on my journey in the art of hand lettering. Here you know, you're starting to see some waves, some ship wheels, steering wheels, and things. You see even more hand lettered stuff working its way in. And I felt like there was just one more thing. Yeah, the compass, and we're starting to get into some monoline artwork here. And even though that wasn't a chosen design, you know, I love work like this. Brian Steely is a good guy. There's another dude whose name escapes me. I'll drop a photo in here right now of his work. He does really killer stuff. And then again, of course, you've got these monograms where you're locking different letters together. And depending on how you do it, you can still use a monogram. Even if it's not the main logo, you can use it in other creative ways. And in just a minute, you're going to see how that might look. Eventually, we get to the point where we want to present a logo to Nick. And so what I do with all of my clients is I'll put together a PDF. I'll throw in every logo. I'll kind of, you know, start with the more traditional, more calm, more safe, more secure options, and usually it's kind of like a volume knob, and we're going to dial it up. And usually the logos towards the end are the ones that I personally feel are the most creative, the most daring, the most different, that kind of thing. And so as we flip through this presentation, I think you're going to see parts of that in here. So there's some opening remarks. We're not going to get into it, but simple word marks. This is just where we've taken a couple of different fonts, we've paired them together, and you can see just what a wide array there are. There are only 12 options on the screen here, and there's already so much possibility, and there's all of these are rabbit holes that we could chase down and explore and try other things. And so you can see how even just with text, before we've done anything even really wildly creative, there are already so many options that are so much fun to explore. This one I really like. This is a font called Selfie. Nick Ainley is another close font if you're looking for one that is free. Selfie is a really cool font. It's got all these beautiful characters that have ligatures and cool extra little flourishes that make it a really fun font to work with. So you see, I love a good slanted text, so I'm always going to work something like that in. But yeah, this was another really fun script word mark idea. This wheel badge, this was really fun. You can see just by inverting it how much the personality changes, adding a couple circles around the outside of it. There's so much you can do with just a couple of visual elements, and it changes the entire vibe of the logo so much. Now this one, this circular badge, this is a fun one. You can see it's kind of got, again, it's a badge, so it's got lots of little flourishes and extra little pieces. You've got the monogram that has worked its way in there. Now you've got some of that kind of hand lettered style of script in here, and then you're pairing that with a nice strong font. So honestly, can't go wrong. This is a great choice. This hexagonal badge, hexagonal, I don't know, however you want to say that. This is a really fun one. Again, we're using that monogram. Instead, this time it is kind of the centerpiece of the logo. And then instead of just drawing a circle around it, why not do a hexagon and do something a little different? You know, can't go wrong. You've got the little ham-ont, as in Hamilton, Ontario, in there as an extra little flourish. It just fills out that space, and it makes this logo work really, really well. The invert also is a really fun option. This one, you can see how you would take a badge and you would simplify it as it gets smaller. So one of the great signs of a logo is that it works when it's on the side of a bus or on a billboard, and it also works on the head of a pin. Now that's not always possible to do. Not every logo is going to look great in all of those contexts. However, with a logo like this, with a badge, when it's big, you can add all these extra details, and when it's small, you can narrow in on the things that matter most and keep those and simplify it down to its core. This monoline badge, you can see that Selfie font working its way back in now. This kind of, you know, these rounded ends, this monoline all the way through. I really like monoline art. Looking back, I don't think this was the strongest thing. Now here you can see me trying to work in some hand lettering word marks. Now, this kind of maybe would vouch a little bit that I've always loved hand lettering, and now that it's become a much bigger part of my design and my creative process, I'm proud of that. Proud of the progress that I've made since the time that I made this logo. You can see this is trying really hard. Using the pen tool in Illustrator is not the most easy thing, but honestly, looking back, it could be worse. It's all right. It's not too bad. This one, you see this monoline starting to come through again, and you can see that the full logo has got all these extra details that would not scale well if you wanted to slim it down. And so you look at the simplified, you look at the version 2, the version 3, all of those are just reducing the logo to its most important elements and getting rid of everything else that is non-essential. Another one, you can't go wrong with a great illustration. This one was fun, the lighthouse. I personally have a huge love for lighthouses, so getting to work it in here, getting in some of those different elements was a lot of fun. This was not, spoiler alert, the ultimate direction that Nick chose to go, but I have held on to this illustration for many years since, and still am proud of it as one of the better things that I've created, certainly in this era of my career. And that would bring you to the end of that presentation. So I always close with a couple of different thoughts on kind of where we go from here, what the client should be thinking of, and so on and so forth. And that is kind of what this is. So this is really fun. And one of the things you might have noticed is that there's no color in this stage of the logo design process. Sometimes I will choose to add color ahead of time. Sometimes I don't. One of the big reasons that when I'm designing in these early stages, I don't use color is because color can kind of trick you. You can think that a bad design is a good design if there are colors that you really like. And then color can also work against you, where you might have a great concept, but if the color is off and it's not quite there, it can actually ruin what is otherwise a really great idea. idea. So using color as something that you're going to incorporate much later in the process helps you kind of focus on one thing at a time, because at the end of the day, great color is not going to make up for a crappy logo. So it's important that we have a great logo first and then we add color after that. So I'm proud to say Nick came back and he loved some of these ideas. I think his first words were that he was going to be the first photographer to have 17 logos. In the end, Nick, after consulting with his wife Lindsay, they ended up on number 8. And this is the circular badge. This is the logo that Nick chose to go with as going to be kind of his bread and butter main logo. And honestly, looking back today, I can say that it definitely is one of the stronger concepts in there. A number of years later, we're going on 6 years since the time that we did this project, Nick is still using this logo. Proud of that. Glad to know that a great logo can last for years and years, and the investment that you make into it is something that can, be an investment, last you a long time if you do it right when you're doing it the first time around. So after Nick had decided on this logo, we jumped into creating some business cards for him, maybe looking at some social media mock-ups and creating colors and a color palette. And so my next round of presentations for Nick is really about focusing on those things. Now that we've got our logo, what can we do to bring it to the next level? How do we actually take this brand over the finish line? Again, a bit of opening remarks in there, and then we get into the color palettes. Now, because Nick is a wedding photographer, it was easy to know where to go for inspiration. Nick, especially then, but even now, has a really distinct color palette that he uses when he's editing photos. And so being able to pull in a bunch of his images into Illustrator, take the core colors from some of those photos and turn those into color palettes that we can use to make his logo and his brand out of is a surefire way and just make the whole thing that much stronger. So you can see here right off the bat, just taking, a very simple approach to taking the picture that has that particular palette and applying it to the logo. It's cool to see, giving him a handful of options and certainly many more if there was a particular photo or a shoot or a color palette that he wanted to include. But being able to tie back these colors, these creative decisions to the existing brand and what they're known for and what matters to them is a really good thing that a beginner graphic designer is not going to be able to do very effectively. But, someone like me who's a pro, who's been doing this for more than 10 years, is going to be able to do in a way that really captures your brand's personality. So you see here, moving that logo onto the website, get an idea of what it would look like in context. You've got your Instagram bio here. That's a great opportunity to use your logo, of course. Now we're getting into the business cards. Now, business cards are just so much fun. You can get so creative with business cards. In this next phase, we're looking at how we brought some of these business card concepts to life for Nick. So again, we're looking at just a solid monochrome option. If the color palette of monochrome spoke to him in order to let his photos do more of the talking and his brand to kind of stay out of the way, this is a very simple monochrome front different option there. Another is to bring in these different photos, look for photos that have textures in them and work them into the background so that they're not the front and center, but you've still got the vibe and that feeling. And again, that recognizable Nautical Studios color palette that lives underneath the logo. Here again, you just see a nice, simple kind of white, light gray and just drop that logo in. Another great option that's hard to argue with. Here we make the color a lot more prominent. We invert that. We make the word nautical white, and then we have the color behind that. And then of course, we're looking at dropping in photos and making photos actually the centerpiece of the business card and making the logo kind of secondary. And so even with that, you can see, between A and B and D and E, where you've got the logo that either can remain monochrome, just remain one color, or you can drop in multiple colors as long as they kind of complement the photo. So again, you see these are just a handful of photos, just a handful of opportunities to work in that logo, and there's just so many possibilities that we don't even get the time to touch because we don't have enough time to do that. You want to go monochrome, let the color do the talking. You can't go wrong with something like this. However, adding in color is definitely the much more fun, much more bold, much more playful choice, which again, if you know Nick Parry, you know his approach to photography, that is definitely going to speak to him a lot more. Who says a business card has to be boring, right? And again, a vertical business card, you want to, take tradition and turn it on its side. Well, you cannot argue with a vertical business card. Again, you see that kind of one color, multiple color logo comparison going on here. Then of course, vertical backs, looking at the different ways that you can lay out information on the back. Always fun because it's very different than what you're used to in a traditional business card. And that's it. So as you can hopefully see, this was such a fun project to work on. There's so many possibilities. Nick was a dream client. Of course he is. He knows what it's like to work with dream clients, and so it makes sense that naturally he would be one. This was a ton of fun. If you are a photographer, if you are just a business owner and you're looking to have a new logo design and you liked the process, you want to partake in something like that, I would love to work with you. So by all means, reach out to me. But otherwise, yeah, thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for watching this video. We'll be doing more like this. So follow me, subscribe, do whatever it is, and we will catch you in the next one. Once again, guys, my name is Aidan Hennebry. Thanks so much.